How are
That's
you,
good.
sir?
Doing good, man. How's your morning? Early morning.
Good morning. Early morning. Yeah,
I
today we
actually brought
decided
out
to go.
the black coffee today. I beat you to it because I've noticed how every podcast you're just like you're doing this, and
Yep.
so I'm like I'm gonna beat him to it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We may go on a tangent today about coffee
Oh,
too.
I'm ready. I'm
Yeah,
ready.
yeah, yeah.
Let's talk about it.
You
I've
been
got
good? How's your week,
I'm
man?
good, man. So I got installed at the church that I'm serving at right now, and I
Congratulations.
think people need clarity on the word installation.
I
And
was just gonna
so,
say that. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, when an ordained pastor leaves the community that they were
Mm-hmm.
pastoring and goes to another community and
Mm-hmm.
gets recognized in that new community, it's called installation. So
Correct.
you can't
Yes.
ordain an ordained pastor twice, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's why we call it installation. But it's funny because I didn't plan on it being this big thing, right? And
Mm.
so I get to church, that
Mm.
happens, and then people started posting on social media. So my friends who are not here are like, "Yo, what are we celebrating today?" Like,
Yeah.
and they're so confused, and so I had to like message every single person and say, "Hey, listen, man, it's just an installation." But because I didn't want to explain what installation was, I was just like, "Man, it's ordination. Let's
Yeah.
get past this," you know. And so it was just a funny thing that happened, but yeah, man.
That's so exciting. So
Yeah,
did
it was
family
awesome.
did family come out?
Family
Friends?
came out. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Oh, I would
The
I would have
church.
loved to have been there. That would have been so nice.
I'm sorry, man.
That's
Like
okay.
to me, it wasn't. To me, it wasn't high stakes, man. But
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just. But it was good. It was a good time. I really, really love the community I serve here.
Mm.
Um, man, I've actually. I don't know if we're gonna talk about leadership today, but but
I swear every time you get me.
yeah, man. I woke up this
Dude,
morning and I'm like, why do I feel like we're gonna talk about leadership today?
thank you. I
Yeah.
was lit. Yo, I kid you not. I was planning on going in the direction of talking about leadership.
That's so awesome.
Kid you not.
Okay,
I
so
promise.
listen, I guess it's a good segue into it, I guess, and we could just
Absolutely.
start going.
Actually, before you do,
Yeah.
explain to the people where you serve, because I don't
Okay.
I don't know if my audience, some of them are from Canada, so
Yeah.
you
So
should start from there.
yeah. So I've been in ministry for about 8 years now.
Mhm.
I started ministry when I was 21 years of age. I was originally from Kansas. And if you don't know where Kansas is, it's in the middle of the map of the United
Yes, sir.
States. And so I traveled to California, went to school, pastored out there for about, about 7 years. And then I moved out here in 2023 to Atlanta.
Mhm.
And I started serving at the Ethiopian Evangelical Church of Atlanta for a whole year. And after that, I said I was serving here, ended up going to another church, serving at another church. And then that's when I became the pastor of this community. So that's where I serve at currently. Yeah, so God's been faithful.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm just very happy you decided to kind of go in the direction of leadership, because that's what I wanted to talk about today too. Actually, I kind of wanted to start off our last podcast together, part one, got a pretty great response.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people loved our conversation on the idea of faith and creativity. And I think you gave a lot of insight in regards to that. I did want to. I was actually looking back at the podcast, and
Yeah.
I know I'm catching you so off guard right now,
No, you're good.
but I wanted you to actually clarify something that you had said.
Okay.
I don't want people to misinterpret you.
Let's do it.
But there
Clarity
was this
is
part.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Clarity is awesome. There's this part where you said God is a supplement.
Mm.
And I wanted you to explain that, because maybe from, I don't know, just religious people tend to twist things and,
Yeah.
just, how is he a supplement? He's just an additive. Isn't he the priority? Isn't he the main
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
I want you to give clarity to that. And then we'll talk about leadership.
That's good. Man, you gotta love the internet, man. You gotta
Yeah,
love because it's sound bites. All of it is sound bites.
exactly. Hmm.
People just will listen to your, podcast, but it's like there's not enough time to really explain yourself.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad
Hmm.
we're giving clarity to this thing because this
Absolutely.
is very, very, very crucial, essential. We don't want heresy to be
Yeah,
spread,
exactly.
and so yeah. So
Yeah.
what I meant is, uh, when I said God is supplemental, I was kind of talking about in the way God works, right? In the way God works, meaning, you know, effort is required in our relationship with God,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
I brought up the analogy to say that, when I was talking about, I remember the exact example that I gave. It
Yeah.
was, what good is it for us to drink a protein shake if we, are not working out, right? Even
Hmm.
in that analogy, what I'm trying to say is, the working out is greater than the protein shake, right? The protein shake
Hmm.
is a supplement, but what I was saying is, um, it's easy for people to, hear that and go, wait, what are you saying? Are you saying God's optional? No, I'm
Yeah.
saying God is
Mm.
essential, right?
Mm. Mm.
But if you don't make God the foundation, and if you're not putting in the effort to grow in faith, right,
There we go. Yeah.
then God just becomes God, and you will not see effectiveness. And so,
Absolutely.
one, I do want to correct myself, though. I think I tend to get really emotional when I talk about a topic. And so,
Mm.
if I could have deleted that or taken that out, I
Mm.
would have taken that out
Yeah. Yeah.
because I feel like, I don't want people to really get the wrong idea. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, all this to say that God is, primary in our lives.
Absolutely.
We are called to seek the kingdom first.
Yes, sir.
Jesus says, if you want to follow me, deny yourself, carry your
Yep.
cross, right? And so,
Yes, sir.
um, we don't want to make God this thing that we could just make part of our lives, right? Actually, Jesus says, man, if you want to follow me, you got to make me the center of your life, right? And everything else revolves
Hmm.
around that. And so that's the clarity for you.
That's great.
Life at this with Jesus at the center of your life, it will be more. It's not even for you, right? But that's how you live as a Christian, is by
Mm.
making sure Jesus is a foundation. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing this up, by the way. I
Absolutely.
really
I got you.
appreciate you, man. That's why you're a
Absolutely.
good friend, man. You would have, man, I didn't want to have enemies, man.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Of course, absolutely. So I think in that same vein, I think it's great to segue into leadership. How important is it to keep God at the center of your life, to make him essential, honestly, to make him everything in leadership,
Hmm.
especially within ministry? Because leadership could be at any capacity. You could work at Target
Yeah,
and be a leader,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
Not that there's anything wrong with Target. I'm
yeah,
just saying the point is leadership is everywhere that you are.
yeah,
Me and you agree on
yeah,
John Maxwell's statement about how
yeah.
leadership is influence.
Yep.
And I think within the context of ministry, because you and I are familiar with that, or if you want to talk about any other sphere, that's okay too.
Yeah.
But how essential is it to keep God at the center, and how does that play out in your leadership?
Very, very. It's crazy how we're talking about this because last
Mm.
night at our young adults Bible study at church, we were talking about First Peter 5, 1 through
Mm.
5, talks about just the character of a leader, elders, and how to submit to them and whatnot. And so, um, and one of the questions uh, was like, "What's a leader that inspires you, or who's the greatest leader that you know?"
Mm.
And man, before anybody says anything, I just beat that question. Like, I asked the question and beat everybody to that question. I said,
Mm.
Jesus is the greatest leader to have ever lived. Because
Yeah.
something inside of me would, I felt like someone in that room was gonna point at me, especially after the whole ordination thing, and go, yeah, that he's a good leader. And I wanted to beat everybody
Mm.
because, man, how sad is it for people to look at me and say, hey, my pastor is the greatest leader, when we actually have the greatest leader of all time, who is Jesus, right? And here's
That's
why:
right.
because we are
Mm.
human, we will fail people, we
Mm.
are weak.
Mm.
We're not going to always get it right. But if we
Yeah.
point people to the greatest leader ever, Jesus, who
Yeah.
is perfect, right?
Mm.
Even when we model our leadership with his leadership, then what will happen is, one, we are held accountable as leaders because there's a standard that's set, right?
Mm.
But
Mm.
two, people are going to be willing to understand our shortcoming because they know that we are also submitted to a great leader who is Christ. And so,
Mm.
when it comes to
Mm.
leadership, man, the greatest model is Jesus. He really is. And so, to me, a leader that's not submitted to Jesus
Mm.
is not a true leader.
Mm. Wow. Submission. It's a very hard thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even for some people, hearing that word comes with this distaste in their mouth. There may be multiple factors that play into that, but the word submission, I think, puts a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to talk about, I think, submission and surrender, because I think your greatest leadership potential and executing that is when you are submitted to authority.
Yeah.
Agree or disagree?
Agreed. This is
Agreed.
one saying that I
Mm.
always say, man, and I heard it somewhere. I forgot who, so it's not mine. Let's
Mm.
just say that it's
Mm.
not mine. But it says that the greatest leaders are the greatest followers.
That's right.
Um,
That's
Essentially, what
right.
it's saying is, man,
Mm.
if you don't know what submitting looks like, you don't know what leading is like.
Mm.
And I mean, when you really think about it, like you just said, right? What allows you
Mm.
to grow as a leader?
Mm.
Submission.
Mm.
Right? Have you noticed how when you have nothing, no one to submit to, you've capped your leadership? Meaning, one, there's
Mm.
no accountability, but two, it's like, man, who's holding you accountable, and who's expanding your expertise, or who's expanding your knowledge, And I can even
That's
talk
really
about
good.
myself, man.
Mm.
In a season where I didn't submit to anyone was the
Mm.
season when I felt like I knew it all. When the moment a
Mm.
leader feels like they know it all is when they don't know nothing.
That's good.
Because yeah,
Mm.
because they've stopped submitting. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
so I think the
Mm.
temptation always happens after some type of success, right? Like with
Mm.
this ordination, right? Or installation. Man, the Holy Spirit was putting in my heart, as this stuff was happening, or the recognition was happening. I was like, the word humility
Mm.
was just in my heart. Like, be humble, be humble, be
Mm.
humble, be
Mm.
humble.
Mm.
Because, I think Paul says it, man. If I chose to serve God for the approval of others, I would have done something else. Right. And so it's
Absolutely.
very
Mm.
tempting to lean in when you're being recognized. But we also have to understand, as leaders, it's
Mm.
kind of a lonely road. Like, there's going to be moments when you're praised, and there's going to be moments when no one's actually recognizing the work that you're doing. Right. And so if we are, um,
Mm.
leading to be recognized,
Mm.
then that becomes our downfall,
Oh, wow. Mm.
because the goal is not to be recognized. The goal is not to have the spotlight. The goal is not to have the platform. The goal is to lead people the way Jesus leads, right? The goal is to influence lives. The goal is to be low, like First Peter 5 says. The goal is to be low so that God could give you favor. And so that word humility was in my heart, man, because when you're humble, when you're submitting, that's actually the greatest foundation to be on. Because you've already
Absolutely.
said, man, hey, listen, I'm here to serve. I'm here to, take this low position. And I'm gonna allow God to give me favor whenever He gives me favor, right? But
That's right.
that's not the thing that I'm chasing after. And so, man, I can go on and on about submission because submission has done so much in my life. Submission for me started in my uncle's house back in San Jose, where, man, it's so my uncle was a professional athlete back home.
Oh
He,
wow. Soccer?
yeah, soccer. So he played for
Okay.
St. George. I don't know if people are
Okay.
familiar with that club, but it's like the Manchester United of Ethiopia, right? So
Oh
they're like
wow.
a top, yeah. So, man, after that, he received Christ, and but one thing I've still see in his life is because he's an athlete, he views his apprenticeship, or like he views his discipleship as an athlete, which is crazy because when you hear what Paul says about discipleship and following Jesus, he's like, man, I hold my body captive. I make sure that it submits to the things of God. And I see this in my uncle. Anyway, that's what his discipleship approaches towards me, right? So I remember so I invited him out for the ordination, and I'm looking around, man, everybody's impressed, right? I look over. My uncle did not look impressed at all. And it's like, I was offended at first. I'm like, man, this is the time when you should be like jumping and clapping and being happy like everybody else. And I knew a conversation was coming, like, and I was waiting for it. And then after, he comes up and he's like, I want to talk to you, man. And he said, am I proud of you? Absolutely. And I felt like, that one clip of Kobe saying, is the job done? Like, all
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
job's
yeah.
not done,
Yeah, yeah.
and he's like, man, but job's not done. Job's not done. And he said this to me. He said, man, back when I was an athlete, and I would score, a goal or two, I'd look over at my coach, and he's like, he wasn't impressed, because until the ref blows that final whistle, the game's still going on. And he's like, my fear is, what if you did score a goal or two, but you still lost, right? So it's not about scoring goals. It's about winning the game. Now, when you bring it back to scripture says, man, fix your eyes on Jesus
Yeah.
and run this race and
Yes.
finish well, right? People are really good starters, but we don't have a lot of great finishers, especially
You
when
have
it
to
comes
say
to
that again.
leadership, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like, man, like, I don't want to start strong. I want to finish strong too. You know what I mean? And so, that's what I admire about my uncle. And that's why, like, it's great to submit to someone like that, because they know you. Like, no one knows me the way my uncle knows me. Right. And it's good to have people who know you well, because
Yeah.
they will be able to lead you well. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it could get annoying, right? Because you try to get away with certain things, and they're kind of like holding you, making you grounded. And I really feel like that was Jesus and Peter's relationship, man. It's like, I feel like Peter would be frustrated with Jesus at certain points of his life, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
Jesus knew him well.
Yeah.
Even to the point of Jesus saying, get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
And for you to not leave Jesus and like just brush, that comment was nothing to
Like,
him, right?
like,
And
who are you to say
yeah,
that to me? Yeah.
I would have been out of there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's okay.
I just called you the son of God.
My leader just
Yeah.
called me Satan. I'm out of here,
Yeah, that's right.
But man, it's so good, because if you look at Peter's life, man, later on, I remember that passage that led us both into ministry in John 21.
That's
If
right.
you love me, go and feed my sheep, man.
Yeah.
Peter
Yeah.
took that and ran with it because he was really good at submitting to a great leader. So I say all this to say, man, submission, submission, submission. You have to learn what
Yeah.
submission is in order to
Yeah.
lead others.
Yeah. And that's right. And submission requires humility. It
Hmm.
requires for you to be humble. I think C.S. Lewis, a quote that you're familiar with when he talks about humility, it's famous, where he says that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking about yourself less.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's this idea of, even the passage you brought up in Hebrews chapter 12 kind of speaks into that, where if we're running this race, in order to complete it, in order to finish it, we have to keep our eyes on Jesus.
Yeah.
We have to start thinking about ourselves, which produces pride and ego and
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And humility just says, it's not like, oh, like, in Habesha culture, sometimes we're miskin and like,
Yeah.
we think less of ourselves in
Yeah.
that way. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's actually false
False
humility.
humility. Yep.
It's not true humility, but humility is what Philippians chapter 2 says. Like counting that, me and my wife were actually just talking about this
Yeah.
a couple of days ago. It's counting the interest of others more than your own.
Yeah.
It's like that's when humility is formed in us, when we start thinking about God more and we start thinking about other people more.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an important quality in leadership,
Yeah.
is to have humility, to have a humble heart. I think that's what made Moses such a great leader, even though he had, his shortcomings with anger problems and leading the people of Israel. But
Yeah.
I think Moses, though he was such a great leader, scripture says he had such great humility. Like he was so focused on the Lord,
Yeah.
depended on the Lord, that, he was able to lead, the people of Israel so well. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I think I want to kind of move in the direction of leading in the Ethiopian circle, in the Habesha circle. As both you and I know, it comes with its challenges, and it comes with great blessings as well.
Yeah.
And I want you to talk a little bit about, I think in our private conversations, about not being so how can I say it, so ambitious that you're trying to reach everyone else, but rather being focused on the Habesha.
Yeah.
Why is that a passion of yours?
Man, look, I'm getting excited again, so you got to hold me accountable, because I could say a lot of stuff that could get me in trouble. Man, so I learned this as a young leader, ambitious and being ambitious. Actually, there's a form of ambition that's actually really good. You don't want to be a leader that is like, man, not dreaming, not having visions, not wanting to challenge the status quo, whatever. But, man, you could be so ambitious that you can miss the thing right in front of you. Right. And I think the danger of ambition is, ambition sometimes makes you run faster than the people that you are leading. Right.
Parse that out.
It's like, man, ambition sometimes can make you lose your pace. Right. When you are supposed to be, on pace with the people that you're leading, what tends to happen is you, because you're ambitious about this thing that you want to accomplish, you go way ahead of the people you are leading. And then now there's this big gap. And now the people that you are called to are underserved because you're chasing a vision that, one, is not in the will of God, because God's not going to give you a vision that's not going to serve his church, right? Sure. And so I think even for leaders, I think something God has taught me is, man, that what is from God serves the church more than it serves you. right? And
Mm.
so when we say God called me to something, we have to
Mm.
consider the church that we are called to, or the body that we're called to, right? Because God doesn't call an individual. He calls a community. He calls a
That's
people.
good.
And so I think
That's
when it
good.
comes to our context, or my specific context, man, I was like, man, I'm going to reach the world for God.
Mm. Mm.
I'm going to reach the lost for God.
Mm.
I want to, I had this, like, where it's us against the world mentality. And
Mm.
that mentality, what it did is it made me neglect the person I am and the community that I've been called to and the people that are under
Mm.
me.
Mm.
I've even, like, tried my best, like, in my own strength and power, to diversify the group that I'm leading. Right, I'm like, man, we're Ethiopian, but man, that's not good right now. I
Mm.
discourage that.
Mm.
I'm like, we need to
Mm.
be diverse, because we're not really, like, representing what the kingdom looks like. And
Mm.
although that is, like, a good desire, right? Um, I didn't even serve that one individual in my church that's like, okay, pastor, I love your vision, but pay attention to me, right? Like, do life with me.
So
And,
good.
I'm not against us expanding and reaching
Sure.
others. But my thing is, man, how are you talking about reaching others and reaching the world when you're not focused on the one, the one, you
Mm.
know?
The one.
Uh, I don't know if you're familiar with Yodi, but Yodi out in California, she has a ministry called Call to the Ones.
Mm.
And man, I resonate with that ministry so much
Mm.
because, man, unless you understand that your calling is to the one, you will
Mm.
never reach the masses. And I think we've, like, flipped that on its head, and we've
Yeah.
been pursuing the masses and neglecting the
Yes.
one.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
man, the moment I embraced this, the moment I'm like, I'm after the one, it changed my conversations with the people that I serve, right? If you ever,
Mm.
so again, I'll talk about myself. Because if I talk about
Mm.
myself, then I won't get in trouble. Um,
Yeah.
um,
It's a big
I,
role in leadership.
yeah. Um, have you ever, like, been in church and you're just
Mm.
having a lot of small talk with people, small talk here,
Mm-hmm.
there, and everywhere? And you
Mm-hmm.
leave the church and you're, like, making 10 appointments with people, and
Yeah.
and the week gets there and you're not keeping one appointment, right? It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
meet this week. Let's grab
Yeah.
coffee, and you leave and you've made like 15 appointments with people. But throughout
Mm-hmm.
the week, you're not meeting with anybody because those
Mm-hmm.
conversations that were just so superficial and small talk. And we're like, man, this guy's not, like, a man of
Mm.
his word. And, because people, one thing, they'll know you're genuine when you do what you say,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even in conversations, like, they'll tell us their name, and there's nothing more disrespectful than for you to say, um, I forgot your name to someone. Like,
Mm.
that's actually, you've just lost that relationship right there. The moment you
Mm.
say, I forgot your name, um, you've lost that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because people want you to be present in conversations.
That's right.
And what's
Yeah.
so amazing is when you listen to someone's name and you ask how that name's pronounced, and then you
Mm-hmm.
refer to them again and you use their name. Then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this guy's engaged. And then the awesome thing is, let's say you see that person 3 weeks from now and you go, hey, I heard you were studying for a midterm. How did the midterm go? Hey,
Yeah.
you told me that you were traveling somewhere. How was that
Yeah.
trip? Now it's
Yeah.
like, man, this guy's listening. This
Mm-hmm.
person's actually, like, engaged in this conversation. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's what I had to learn in my own life. Is like, man, you cannot, people want to be seen. They want to be
Mm.
loved. They want to be
Yes.
noticed. And so,
Yes.
although you're ambitious about changing the world for Jesus,
Yeah.
change a life first. influence
Yes.
a life first. And
Yes.
so, like
Yes.
you stated earlier, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
man, some of us want to be great leaders for Jesus, but we do a terrible job at influencing our siblings or even our
Yeah.
parents. It starts
Yeah.
in the home.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
when I think about influence, man, I'm like, okay,
Mm.
what does my mom think of me? What does my dad think of me? What do my siblings think of me? What do my close friends think of me? Right. And if they're understanding of me, or if their life has not been impacted in any type of way, what am I doing trying to change the world? Let me
So
start
good.
off with my household, right? Or even as
Yes.
a
Yes.
person who's married, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
don't have influence over my wife or my
Mm-hmm.
daughter,
Mm-hmm.
what am I doing trying to change the
Mm-hmm.
world?
Mm-hmm.
And what good is it if the world feels like they've been influenced by you, but your household doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the approach that I'm taking in my community, and it's been amazing. I know you've
Wow.
had the chance to come and visit, and
Yep.
I think you could say that we're well connected. We are excited to be there. We love each other,
Yep.
and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And I'm going to try really hard not to be prideful here. Is it took actual work of connecting with
Yeah.
every single individual, and
That's
what
right.
happens is when you're genuine, it's contagious. Then people start
Yes.
being genuine to, you know, what
Yes.
one thing I believe is prayer is what unifies a church. I really
Mm.
believe in that. But
Mm.
two, if you think your programs and systems and all these things that you're trying to do to unify, that's not going to work. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
lazy, right? Programs are
Mm-hmm.
lazy. The hard work
Mm.
is actually being out on the field and
That's
working,
right.
right? And
That's
you
right.
know, I want to be the pastor that's preaching on Sunday and helping someone move on Monday, right? I want to be
Mm.
the pastor that's preaching on Sunday and fixing your tires on Wednesday, right?
So
Because
good.
because when that happens, right, I am part of the community. I'm not just speaking to the community. I'm doing life with the community, right? And so
So good.
and it goes back to leaders are servants.
Mm.
Leaders, yeah, servant leadership is a great passion of mine. We've got, so our servant leadership is modeled at the church, is modeled around Philippians chapter 2. And we see five
Mm.
things in Philippians chapter 2, right? We see the empathy of Jesus. We see the humility of Jesus. We see um, um, the collaborative nature of Jesus. We see the selflessness of Jesus. And then we
Yeah.
see the accountability of Jesus. And so we've modeled
Yes.
our servant leadership model around these five things. These are our pillars. So if you
Mm.
want to be a leader at our church, right, these are the things that we are looking at while you're coming to the church and you're a volunteer. And we go, okay, this person is displaying these things because, and everybody holds everybody accountable, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there's actually a project that I'm working on this weekend at the church.
Mm.
Our basketball hoop has been just broken, and people have been
Mm.
complaining, "Hey, we need a new hoop."
Mm.
And I'm not waiting. We're not waiting for anybody else to do it.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
the pastor's also going to be like putting the hoop together,
Mm-hmm.
and and this is what leadership is, man.
Yes,
It's
sir.
not me getting a reserved section in the side of the church. It's not me getting, special treatment. It's not me
Mm.
being worshipped. Let's talk about that, man. Leaders should be pointing people to Jesus.
Yes.
If a church is worshiping a leader, there's a big problem,
Mm-hmm.
because if the leader is idolized, that means Jesus is being clouded. In other words, Jesus is being forgotten, right?
Yes.
And so we
Yes.
really have to teach this thing now, especially now, to make sure that a leader, is always pointing people to Jesus and not to themselves, right?
Mm.
If I point you to me, right,
Mm.
then if I mess up, that's gonna mess your world up. If I mess up,
Absolutely.
you're gonna be messed up, right? But if I'm like, hey, I'm weak, I'm with you, I'm just like you, but point to him, then everybody has a standard to follow, right? Because he's a
Yes.
perfect standard, like I said earlier. And so, and there's also one path. I'll say this and I'll finish because I want to bring it all together.
Mm.
Man, Jesus says, "I call you friends."
Mm.
Man, what good is it? I said this to them the other day. I'm not your pastor. I'm your brother.
Mm. Mm.
I'm your friend,
Mm.
right? And that's how I want to pastor you. That's how I want to
Mm.
shepherd you as a friend,
Mm. Mm.
as a brother. You know,
Mm.
Jesus says two things. First, he says, "I call you friends," right? I
Mm.
don't, I'm not a master.
Yeah.
I'm your friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I always look at that and I go, "Oh my God, what a great leader Jesus is." Because
Mm.
most leaders, what they do is they lord their position over
That's
on
right.
people, right? Like
That's right.
like the people we call bad leaders are usually dictators, and the nature of a
Mm.
dictator is always to point to their position to enforce something. Jesus did
Yeah.
not point to his position, because if he pointed to his
Mm.
position, remember, he's all God, he's all divine, right? So he had the ability to be like, "Hey, I'm God's son. Submit to me." No, he said, "I'm your friend
Mm.
and I want to influence you." So there's a
Wow.
difference between submitting to someone because of their position, and there's a difference between submitting to someone because you genuinely feel safe around them, right?
Yes.
And I don't know where you worked growing up, like whatever bosses that you've had, but I keenly remember like this boss that I had back when I was like a security guard going through college. And man, I'll tell you right now, man, the only reason I submitted to that boss
Mm.
was because of his position.
Mm.
I was so scared of him, bro, that I
Mm.
would have nightmares about him at night. Like that's how bad it was, man.
Mm.
I would be scared to ask for a day off.
Sure. Sure.
This looks like submission to a leader, but it's really forced submission,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
Where when you look at Jesus, man, he's not forcing anybody to submit to him,
Mm.
right? When you look at like, cults, right? What makes something a cult is when that leader forces you to do stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says I get so triggered when people are like, "Man, this is kind of like no, it's not. Jesus is not for you. Could come today and leave tomorrow,
That's right, sir.
right?
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
what leads you to Jesus is love.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
Yeah. Yeah.
manipulation. It's
Yes.
not, it's purely love that makes you want to submit to Christ,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how we model it. And when you start doing that, man, you stay away from all the gimmicky and manipulate. You stop. Like
Yeah.
one, I understand I'm not in control of people, but two, my goal is to love people wholeheartedly, and love in action is something that could actually influence a life for the greater good. And so, yeah, that's what I want to say. Another thing, he calls them friends. And then remember when they came up to
Mm.
Jesus and they're like, "Yo, Jesus, your brother and sister need you, or your mom, your brother and sister." He's like, "You know who my brothers and sisters are?
Mm.
Y'all." Why? Because
Mm.
the kingdom, y'all are doing the kingdom's work with me. Y'all
That's
are my
right.
brothers and sisters. And so
Yeah.
I look at that and I learned so much from that. The way Jesus kind of looks at the people he leads and says, "I'm doing it with you. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm doing it with you." So,
That's right. Dude, you said so much. And it was so good. I think number one, I just want to respond to what you said because there were so many biblical truths that you pointed out. Um, and I'm just processing it all right
yeah.
now. But I think one that really comes to my mind is I think that a lot of how the world does business or CEOs has, I think, crept into the church. I think we see our churches as businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think pastors like us uh, can fall susceptible to the lie that we're CEOs
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
bosses.
Yeah.
And I think what I hear you saying is that when Jesus steps into the scene, even though he's master and Lord, he redefines
Mm.
lordship
Mm.
and being a master
Yeah.
as being the greatest servant and the ultimate friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful because number one, that helps you to stop thinking that the church is just this corporate organization,
Yeah.
and it helps you to start to begin to tend as a shepherd should
Yeah.
tend and serve, be intimate.
Yeah.
In other words, be close
Yeah.
with the sheep, with the
Yeah.
people, with the congregation. And I think this is so important, Moni, because, earlier when you were talking about being so overly ambitious, because there is a healthy form
Yeah.
of ambition, but I think selfish ambition, which is more about you
You.
instead of other people, I think if you are someone that really starts thinking about the one and the people in front of you, I think you really operate in a way of leadership that is able to transform the community,
Yeah.
because it really is about the one.
Yeah.
And I think this is an encouragement to, I think, a lot of leaders,
Mhm.
whatever sphere you're in.
Yeah.
I think stop thinking about, I think, have vision,
Yeah.
have dreams, and it's good, but don't let that take you away from the present
Yeah. Yeah.
moment
Yeah. Yeah.
of looking that person in the face,
Yeah.
looking into their soul through their eyes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and being intentional with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I hear you saying,
Yeah, man. I sorry to cut you off, man.
No, you're good.
You
You're
said
good. You're
something
good.
I just did not want to forget what I was gonna say. So a lot of leaders deal with comparison. Like you're always comparing yourself. You're always comparing how you're doing, right? So it's like whenever we're like, okay, are we successful? The first thing we do is look at people who we deem to be successful. Now, there's nothing that kills off comparison the way than being present, right? Actually, what happens is you begin to enjoy what you're doing,
That's good.
right? And
Yeah.
actually, when you begin to enjoy what you are doing, you also begin to celebrate other people instead
That's
of
good.
coveting what they have.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
and at least in my journey, what I've noticed is, man, when I'm really, really enjoying what is here, the thing that's here begins to thrive. And the moment I'm like, man, I wish we were like them. I wish we did things like that, is when the thing that's in my hands begins to diminish, because what I'm really saying is I value that over this. So just going back to your point, man, when you're, when you're, I guess, ambitious, right? The selfish ambition, what it does is actually that I feel like that's the root cause of comparison, and just, and comparing your life or comparing what you're doing with others. And eventually the sad reality of that is, without you knowing it, you'll start becoming an insecure leader, right? An
Yeah.
insecure leader is a leader that has his foundation set on other things outside of Christ, right?
Yeah.
And so, but when Christ is the foundation, when you value what Jesus has given you, and when you are being faithful with the little, and you are just, like excited about the people that are in front of you, then what ends up happening, man, is just you don't even know it, but it's like you're in a really, really healthy environment. And that's when people will come up to you and go, hey, man, what are you guys doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And your answer to that would just be, man, we love the one.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
focus
Yeah.
on the one. And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to say that real quick. Why? Because you stirred that up in me, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, it's really like, I think, I don't know whoever's listening to this right now, man, the way you kill off comparison is by actually enjoying what's in front of you, right?
Yeah.
John
Yeah.
Maxwell
Yeah.
says this, man. If you're too big um, to serve,
Mm.
you're too little to lead. And his whole
Say that again.
he
Yeah.
says,
Say that
if you're
again.
too big to serve, that
Mm.
means you're too small to lead, right? And
Wow.
what he's really
Mm.
getting at is, man, you ever idolized a certain position, and the person that's leading you or whatever goes, actually, this is what you want, but this is what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, I really want to be part of the worship team, and the leader comes up to you and says, "Oh, amazing, you're gonna help us with parking lot duties." There's a sting inside of you that's like,
Moni,
I want to
say that
be.
again one more time. That last part.
Yeah, so like,
That last part.
yeah, the leader says, "Hey, I know worship's in your heart. I know you want to worship God. I know you want to be
Mm.
on that platform. But what
Mm.
we need you to do now is we need you to help out with parking, or we
Gotcha.
need you
Mm.
to snack up chairs, or we
Mm.
need you to
Mm.
help clean the room, right?" And so,
Mm.
and there's this inner struggle in you to be like, but that's the position I want. But this is the position you're giving me, right? And
Mm.
so a great leader will be like, let's go. I'm doing that. Give it to me. I'm going to do this thing well.
Wow.
Now, the leaders the people I'm really scared of are the people that are like always after promotion and position. And those people scare me because um, it tells me a lot about their character, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's why he says, man, if you're too big for anything, any type of service, if you're too big for that, you're too little to lead, right?
Yeah.
Because
Mm.
leadership is responsibility, right? And so the reason you need to be faithful with the little is because although you think the next thing is promotion, it's actually great responsibility, right?
That's right.
And people
That's right.
think, man, it's like, man, it's so hard to stack up chairs and it's so hard to do that. Man, wait until you get to leading 300, 400,
Mm.
500 people. You're going to wish. There's going to be moments you're going to wish that like you were just cleaning the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
so it kind of promotes you. It kind of, I'm sorry, not promote, but it allows you to grow and develop. And,
Yeah.
man, thank God for those moments when those leaders said, "Hey, man, we're going to need you in the back doing lights and doing sound." And I'm like, but I'm a pastor. I'm called for
Mm.
pastoral. And I'm like,
Yeah.
now I'm understanding you could be a pastor behind the soundboard. You
Yes.
could be a pastor while doing helping with the parking or whatever. And so, man, that really redefines what leadership is to us, right? And
Mm.
yeah, that's why I wanted to say that, man. But anyway,
That's so good. Great to be a great leader. I think to summarize this,
yeah,
you have to be a great servant,
yes,
an
yes, absolutely,
extraordinary servant.
absolutely, yeah,
And I think it's so important especially within the context of leadership, it's so important wherever you are a leader. In other words, you have influence, whether
mm-hmm.
that's in your family, whether that's at your job, whether that's at your school. I think one of the great ways to actually evangelize and bring the gospel is through your servanthood,
Yep, yep,
your ability to serve
yes,
other people
yes,
in regards to unbelievers,
yeah,
in regards to
yeah,
people who don't know Christ,
yeah,
because they see this servant heart, this love in you, and it ministers to them. I think
yep.
who was it, Saint Francis of Assisi?
Hmm.
He said this famous quote. He said, "Preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use
Yeah,
words."
yeah, 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 yeah,
And it's this idea that he's obviously not saying that words are not important, um, but he is saying that our actions speak the gospel. Our servanthood speaks and communicates the gospel to other people.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really glad we're having this. I was, as you were talking, I was like, I'm gonna send this to my launch team
Yeah.
because I think we all need to hear this, especially
Yeah.
in leadership. It's so important that if you want to be a great leader, you have to be an extraordinary servant.
Yeah.
And I think this is such an important point.
Yeah.
Such an important point.
I also want to help people who are leading others. I feel like we talked
Mm,
so much on
mm,
submission that we
mm,
forgot to talk about
mm,
what makes a great leader or the
mm,
characteristics of a great leader, right?
mm, mm, mm,
And I don't know who said this, but when you look at someone and go, man, that person's mature or that person
mm,
has really good character, it's when
mm,
it's when they are consistent.
mm,
Consistency. People who are submitted under you or people that you lead
mm,
require consistency from you.
mm,
Consistency is key. In other
mm.
words, consistency is developed from character, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mm,
you cannot be who you're not in private, in public, right?
mm.
And this is a big thing. This is something I always have to tell myself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When we look
Yeah.
at a very confident leader, when we look at a leader that has high integrity, accountability, it's because they're not faking it. Right? I mean, it's
Mm,
not. They're not
mm,
living a lie.
mm.
I'm actually about to get into the book "Live No Lies" by John Mark,
Okay.
and because I really like in this season, I'm using that as a way to grow as a leader,
Mm,
because man, the moment a leader begins to live a life that has no lies is when they
mm,
actually begin to lead people well. Because
mm.
what usually happens is what we say to those we lead versus what we do in private is different sometimes, right?
That's good.
And so
Mm,
it's like, man, I think for leaders right now, one thing I'll say is, man, be as consistent as you could be. Actually live out the things you preach. Be the person you call others to be when no one sees you, right?
mm,
And
mm,
so that's one thing. The second thing I want to also mention for leaders is, what do you do when someone leaves you? Like someone you
mm,
poured into for years leaves you. This
mm.
is I just feel it in my heart to speak on this because
That's good.
I think some leaders have, or in my experience, I've had this scarcity mindset where
Mm,
we're like trying to like keep people in the church. We're like, hey man, I've invested in you for 5 years. Don't leave me. And that's
mm.
like, man, nobody wants to be under that type of leadership. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
So
Mm,
how do you overcome the scarcity mindset, right?
mm,
Um, you have to understand that the person that you are leading is not
mm,
yours.
mm.
And so you're kind of like a person that got us put in that season to develop that person for their next season.
Yeah,
Does
that's
that make
right.
sense? And when you
Yes.
have that mentality, right, what happens is you've served that person well in that season. And the next
Mm,
person that steps into your doors, right, gets to even be served at a higher standard because you've grown as a leader by serving the person that just left. That
that's
makes
good.
sense, right? It's
It
like I know I've
does.
said a
Yeah.
lot, but it's like, man, I'm like, wow, this person that I was leading went from point A to point B. Praise God.
Mm,
The
mm,
person that comes in now gets me at like, for example, so let's use levels, right? Levels.
mm,
Um,
mm,
let's say you're a level 7 leader, right?
mm,
And
mm,
you've gotten the person that you're leading to the level 7, and they've
mm,
capped. They're
mm,
like, hey, Pastor, I'm going into the next season. Don't be
mm.
insecure about that, right?
That's good. Mm,
Because that person is going into a season where their leadership is going to grow, right? But for
yes.
you, that person that you're leading has gotten you to a level 7 leader, right? So when the new
Mm.
person comes in, they're getting led by someone that has matured, and then now you're at a level 10 leadership, right? And so the person,
Wow.
like, you get them to that level, and then they leave. What you have to understand is, I have grown as a leader. I say all this
Wow.
to say, man, some of my formative years, some of the
Mm.
growth that happened in California when I was a young leader. Oh, I'm so thankful for and grateful for, because in this context of my leadership now in this
Yes.
season,
Wow.
I'm
Mm.
like, dude, people are like, this, why does it come naturally to you? And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. It's not natural. This took years of failure
Years.
and years of
Wow.
to get to where I'm at. And so,
Mm.
man, like, now I'm excited, because I'm like, man, what type of leader am I going to be when I'm 40, when I'm
Mm-hmm.
50, when I'm
Mm-hmm.
60? And so what helps me with that scarcity mindset of, man, people are leaving me, I'm such a bad leader, is, man, wow, like, I've grown as a leader by leading this person, and so when that
Wow.
happens, you bless that person into the next season, and it's not going to be like this petty, resentful
Yeah.
blessing, like, hey, God
Mm.
bless you. And now it's more so, I am so
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
I love what Paul says. Let's bring it back to scripture.
Let's
He
do it.
says, sow the seeds,
Mm.
Apollos waters it,
Mm.
but the Lord provides the increase. What is he
Mm-hmm.
saying? Sometimes, if we feel like we have to be the ones that are supposed to be responsible for the increase,
Mm.
nah. In this season, God will use you to sow the seed, and then he'll use the next leader to water. But at the end of the day, the goal is not what leader did the best job. The goal is the glory of God.
That's right.
God allowed the increase.
That's right.
God allowed for that person to be sanctified.
That's right.
God allowed for that person to look more and more like Jesus.
That's right.
And when it's all said and done, and God says, well done, my good and faithful servant,
Mm.
his metric of success is way different than our metric of success. He's
Totally.
not going to say, you gathered a crowd. No, no. He's going to say, you participated in the way
Mm.
that my sheep are to be shepherded.
Yeah.
And for that,
Yeah.
you get the crown of glory.
Yeah.
For that, you get the
Yeah.
crown of whatever crown we receive, crown of righteousness. And I think
Mm.
when our desire is that crown is going to be placed on our head on the other side of eternity is greater than the crown that we desire here on earth,
Mm.
we will lead people well. I
That's
completely
right.
and we are celebrating success, like, genuinely.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
when your
Genuinely.
church is thriving, that means
Mm-hmm.
my church is thriving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when your people are doing well, it's like my people doing well, right?
That's right.
Because we are,
That's
at the
right.
end of the day, we are all church, right? We are
Yep.
all in this
One
walk
body.
together. And so,
That's right.
yeah, man, I really wanted to speak on two things: consistency as a leader and this scarcity mindset. Um, yeah. And I really feel like the second one is what will keep you in leadership for the long haul, man.
Wow.
Don't quit on leadership. The other day, actually, man,
Mm.
like, there you go again, having me ramble and talk. And
I love it. I love it. It makes my job easier.
man, you ask great questions. That's what it is.
Thank you.
I got a DM on
Mm.
Instagram the other day, and
Mm.
message
Mm.
said something along the lines of, I wasn't consistent at church, and I didn't come every
Mm.
Sunday. But he said, all those messages you preached
Mm.
making sense to me now.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow. Like, how many seeds have we sown
Mm.
that we wanted direct results for the next day?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that message kind of encouraged me to continue sowing the seed,
That's right. That's right.
because, no farmer sows a seed and walks out to the farm the next day and demands that that thing grows. It just doesn't
Yeah.
happen. That's
Yeah.
not how it happens. You wait.
That's right.
So sometimes I'm like, God, make me like a farmer where I've got the discipline to just wait it out, you know? Because what I sow today might not grow it may take a long time. And so
That's right.
I really feel like our job is to just sow seeds, man. Because
Wow.
I'm not gonna lie, like I had some type of resentment. Like I'm like I'd preach a sermon or I'd do a one-on-one conversation, and I'm like, do they get it?
Yeah.
Why does it not make sense to them?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
feel like and it's just like we get frustrated, we get annoyed, and sometimes we're
Yes.
like, man, the thing that I'm doing right now, I'm not seeing fruits. I'm not seeing fruits. Well, it's because the seed is germinating. And I started studying like
Yeah.
I'm not really big. I love plants, but I'm like, how does a seed go from like the seed form to like it actually growing? And there's this thing called germination, right?
That's
And
right.
as the seed germinates, it is maturing into that. And so if you get frustrated during the germination process, then it's like, don't get mad. It's still like that seed is still growing. You just can't
Wow.
see it yet because the growth is happening underground, right?
That's right.
And so that's why I say, man, it's just don't quit on leadership, don't quit on sowing, don't quit on serving, don't
Yeah.
quit, because if you quit, what happens is the enemy wins. The enemy
Yep.
wins. I've seen it
Yep.
every time because you know, one thing that the enemy is scared of is a leader that endures till the end.
Yes. Yes.
Because if you are so stubborn about you following Christ and leading others, like I mean, like stubborn about it, like I'm not letting go, then in season and out of season, you will remain faithful. And so, yeah,
That's right. Dude, my goodness. I mean, what can you what can you say after that?
I've tried my best to really. I don't know, man. This is my reality right now in leadership,
That's
dude.
wisdom. It's wisdom.
And there's still, and I say all this to say, there's more growth that needs to
Yeah.
happen in my life. But man, I just love God and love people, man. It just, I
Yeah.
feel it all comes down to that: love God and love people, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like really love people.
Yeah. I actually want to like speak into you, man, because I feel like, you know, when I hear you speak, it seems like you're just this well of continual, like you call it rambling. I call it a well.
Okay.
I call it a spring
Yeah.
because I think you're just overflowing,
Yeah.
you know? And I just pray. So I've been meditating on a passage, and I think one of the reasons why I've been meditating on it is, I think, for you, to be honest. I think it's speaking into your life. But Jesus says, I have loved you just as the Father has loved me. Remain in my love.
Yeah.
And then he says, obey my commandments so that you may remain in my love. Just as I remain in my Father's love because I obey his commandments. And then he says this. He says, I've told you these things so that you may be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow.
Come on.
And dude, I feel like just even prophetically, your joy is overflowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's just because you're remaining in his love.
That's it.
You're remaining in loving other people, which is the commandment, by the way.
Yeah.
That's the commandment, is to love other people and to love him. And dude, I just pray more of that for you in this season. Yeah.
Dude,
that's John chapter 15, by the way, verse 9 to 12.
I'm going to be in it this week. I promise.
Yeah.
I got chills just you saying that because, man, the seasons where I'm abiding in Christ, the seasons where I've just, I've desired nothing else than the love that I've
Mm-hmm.
been given through what Jesus did on the cross for me.
Come on.
That by itself is my greatest treasure in life,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
And have you noticed that when you are fully immersed in that love,
Mm-hmm.
how immediately, like you just stated, joy and
Yeah.
peace and
Mm-hmm.
rest that just
Mm-hmm.
begin to just, I don't know how to explain it. Like it begins to just occupy, like, man, how do I explain this? It's like as I'm saying this, like it's like I'm envisioning like something that's just overtaking an
Yeah.
environment. Just something just begins to just
Mm.
flow inside of you. And you talked about overflow. You
Mm.
know, it begins to slowly occupy you, and then it comes out of you, right? And
Yes.
that's what, you know, even when we look at the fruits of the spirit, man, you know, it's I can't love from
Mm.
myself. I can't be
That's right.
gentle. I can't be
Mm-hmm.
kind from my
Mm-hmm.
it's not something that my flesh can produce. It's just not.
Mm. Mm.
But man, when I walk in the spirit, like Galatians 5 says, and I submit myself to the spirit,
Mm.
over time, these things begin to show in my life. And it's
Yes.
not I that notices it. It's
That's
other
right.
people. Hey,
Mm.
you're a loving person. You're a kind person. You're a gentle person. And who gets the credit for that? Not
Mm.
me, because I didn't
That's right.
produce these things out of myself,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And I could gain it all, lose it all. Man, for me, how does Paul put it? I've seen it all.
Mm-hmm.
I've been rich. I've been
Mm-hmm.
poor, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm content because this love that I found in Christ
Mm.
exceeds everything in life. And so,
Everything.
yeah, man, as you're saying this, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I want more of this love. Like
Yes.
I want to go deeper into this love.
Mm.
And the thing is, the longing of my soul is satisfied, not
Mm.
in the things that are out here in the material world,
That's right.
but actually simply in the fact that I'm loved by God, you know?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you know how hard it is to thrive, I mean to strive for these things that are just like, man, if I get this thing, if I get that thing, and it's just like they make us work so hard,
Mm-hmm.
but these things are earned.
Yeah.
The love of God is received. There's
Yes.
just so much. I mean, think about it, man. The thing that I want the most is to be received, not earned.
That's right.
Which means if I really sit here and kind of think about it, I could save myself so much energy and effort and even time, like life, right? I'm so glad that
Mm.
you and I have found this. I have accepted Christ at the age that we've accepted Him, because that means our quality of life increases just based off of the fact that in this life we don't live for ourselves, but we live for
That's
Him,
right.
right?
That's right.
So
Mm.
so so um so that means just striving is out of the way. Like trying to
Come on.
earn things is
Mm-hmm.
out of the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't have to look for others to feel loved. I don't have to
Mm.
look for others to be accepted.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have to gain money or power or
Have
have
a big
influence.
ministry.
Yes,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
because it's like, man, when you get to that point of saying, man, I'm loved,
Yeah.
you know, you actually become really attractive to other people.
Yes,
It's like you're
sir.
a magnet.
Mm-hmm.
Because like all they see in you is just abundance of
Mm-hmm.
love, abundance of joy, abundance of faith, abundance of patience. And they're like, this naturally, people just tend to gravitate towards that, right?
Mm.
But the moment you miss that mark of like, or you forget about how much you're loved by God. I say this because I needed this word. I needed John 15, because
Mm.
the moment I forget love or that I'm
Mm.
loved, I can do everything.
That's right.
Right? I could do everything. I could do anything,
That's right.
but I'll still feel empty.
That's right.
Ephesians, the church of Ephesians.
Mm.
they were commended for just
Mm.
all the activity that was happening in
Yeah.
that church. I mean,
Mhm.
if you and I were to walk into that church today, we'd be
Mm.
like, yep, look at this lighting, look at the
Yeah.
congregation, look at the
Yeah.
crowd. Everybody looks so spiritually healthy to our naked eye, to us. But the letter says, man, you're commended. I mean, this looks
Yeah.
like a successful church,
Mm.
but it misses love. It does
Love.
not have love in it.
Mm.
And which lets me know that we can accomplish anything. We could
Mm.
gather crowds. We
Mm.
can even seem successful.
Mm.
But if we lack love,
Yeah.
love for God and love for his people,
Yeah.
it's all meaningless.
That's right.
It's
So
all
good.
meaningless. Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is why, as we go back to the beginning of our conversation, to those that are listening and watching, this is why having God as essential as everything in all aspects of life
All aspects. Yep.
is so important.
So important.
I have nothing to add to that,
That's it.
sir.
That's it.
That's
I
it.
love how you brought
That's
it
it.
full circle because I
That's
mean,
it.
this whole thing really made
Yeah.
Jesus the center. Like we talked about
Absolutely.
leadership, but we really talked
Yeah.
about Christ, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I love you, man.
Yeah.
You are my brother.
Yes, sir.
Man, our private conversations, our public conversations just end up being so fruitful.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to have you in my life, man.
Yeah.
Seriously, God bless you and your ministry, your family, everything. May just God enrich you more and more and more in his presence and let that just overflow, dude.
Yeah. And
I appreciate you.
I wanted to also say, man, I want to also prophetically speak into your current season right now. And, you know, just stay in the will of God, love your people,
Yes, sir.
love his mission, kind of like everything we talked about today. Just immerse yourself in God's love, right? And always make sure that your success shouldn't be the way you want it, but it should always be the way he wants it.
Come on.
Right. And I want to say that your community, right, is lucky to have you. And I say this because there's also moments when I was like, man, what would it be like for him to be my pastor? There were seasons when I literally asked myself, man, I would definitely be up for him being my pastor. And I only say this because I know how you came to Christ. And two, I know how much you love people. And so I just want to say in this season, love God and love people well.
Come on.
And let him increase it the way he wants to increase it. You know,
good.
and I really believe that the people that are going to be a part of this thing that's happening are going to be sent to you by God. It's not going to be people you're going to be recruiting. It's not going to be people that you're going to be, asking to join you. It's going to be people that are like, Sam, I'm going to stand by your side. And this is not from you, but it's from God. And just make sure that you steward those people well. That's it.
Wow. So good.
Yeah.
Much love, man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, fam.
Yeah.
Seriously, this was great.
Wow. I'm glad we did this, man. So that's it, man. I love you. I want to,
Love you too.
we got to link up soon. And
Yeah, it's a must. I hope you enjoyed that video. I want to give you guys a few reminders before you guys leave. Please subscribe, comment, and also like the video. The more engagement there is, the better. Second, if you want to be notified on when these videos come out, click the bell button on the top right-hand corner of the YouTube page. And lastly, if you want to check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, please click the link down below in the description. Other than that, have a great day, guys. Ciao.